All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little Warrior videos. The Warriors finally pull the trigger on a Jonathan Kuminga trade. We'll tell you all about it and what we think of it coming up next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. The best barbecue in all of Northern California is Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera, and they're opening in 2026 in Petaluma. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue you're going to find in all of Northern California. Get the brisket chili. It's all good. Go say hi to Damon and Mary and tell them that Krug sent you. All right, finally, it is here. It is here. The Warriors have actually traded Jonathan Kuminga, and it seems like Kuminga's been around forever, and he's just 23. I mean, it just really shows how, how much talk there's been about this guy being traded and how much upside there is. I think the Hawks are the clear winner here, okay? I know Warrior fans don't want to hear that, but Jonathan Kuminga is 23, and the Warriors jerked him around horribly and mismanaged him to death. And he's an incredibly athletic, active wing. He's lost some of his spring because now he is 23. He's got a little bit of mileage on him, but he's still one of the best athletes in the league. He's going to be a great wing for the Hawks. They get Buddy Hield, who's a mid-30s three-point sniper, 33. They'll play perfectly off of Trae Young, and it's a good move for the Hawks, and for the Warriors, it's a question mark. They're just kicking this can further down the road. Now they do like Porzingis, so it's not just like they traded him for a salary spot. Porzingis has a $30.7 million expiring deal, though. But the Warriors have long admired his game, and he does give you some things. I mean, I kind of like Porzingis. He was good a couple of years ago. He helped those Celtics win a championship. He's a stretch big. He's a huge guy. He's 7'3". I mean, he's literally a legitimate 7'3" with skill. He's actually one of the freakiest players in the history of the NBA, if you really think about it. When you think about his skill level and his size at 7'3", there aren't that many 7'3" guys that are as athletic as Porzingis. So he's a stretch big. He's averaging 17.1 points per game, but he's only played 17 games all year. As I said, the big value in him is the $30.7 million expiring contract, which comes off the books this summer. And yet the Warriors could keep him beyond that, or they could go big game hunting in free agency. What I've always liked about Porzingis is that he's the rare player who's he's a rim protector and he's also a floor spacer. It's like there aren't that many guys who can do that, who can literally, protect the rim and block some shots and also shoot the three ball and stretch the floor. And what's awesome about Porzingis is that when you're, 6'3" and you shoot the three, you got to get out on a guy a little bit. But when a guy's like 6'6" and he can shoot the three, wow, you really got to get out there. When a guy is over 7 feet tall and he can shoot the three, you got to really get out there. I mean, you got to think about it. You got to get way out there to get a hand in his face. He's a career 36% three-point shooter. So he gives the Warriors a guy that can play opposite Steph and stretch the floor and do some things that they previously couldn't do. This was obviously Golden State's plan B after their pursuit of Giannis fell short. According to the reports, the Warriors offered the Bucks Draymond Green, Brandon Podziemski, Jonathan Kuminga, and a bunch of picks. And Milwaukee was like, no, we don't want to do that. So they're going to kick the Giannis can down the road till the summer. And then you've got teams like Miami and the Knicks, possibly Minnesota and others that are going to have cap room, and there'll be another run at Giannis. But I don't think the Warriors will be making that run because now they don't have that piece in Kuminga to kind of, to be as the centerpiece. And I'm sure the Bucks looked at the Warriors and were like, you know what, this could be really attractive. We could get, Jimmy Butler and all these expirings. But then you think about the emotional toll on your on your fan base to get nothing back, to trade somebody for nothing. That's what you're getting in Jimmy Butler. He can't play it all this year, and he's old, and he's broken. So you're going to trade Giannis for an old, broken player. It's like, if they were going to trade Giannis, I think they were going to need a bunch of picks, a bunch of expirings, and, a really great young player. And I don't think Kuminga fills that need. He's potentially a really great young player, but he's not definitely a really great young player. And I think the Bucks are going to wait until the summer. Miami can throw more assets at them. The big center, Hero, and a bunch of other things. They've got things that they can do, that their picks that are freed up more this summer when the calendar turns over. So, they have that Stepien rule that says you can't trade first in back-to-back years. And it was put in place because the Lakers got Worthy, I believe, and it was from the Cavs, and it was like all these picks, and it was just a nightmare. So they don't let teams trade pick number ones in back-to-back years. So it makes things a little bit more complicated for some teams to put together packages, especially big packages for players like Giannis. But this was definitely the Warriors' plan B, right? This is not plan A. This is plan B, but they couldn't do nothing. And some people would say this is almost nothing, because did you really open Steph's window? I guess you pried it open for the year. But, I mean, does anybody really believe that that Steph Curry with Porzingis and the group he's got around him right now is going to make a run even to the conference finals? They're a play-in team. They're a play-in team for sure. Jimmy Butler obviously is out for the year. What can they do with his salary? Is he going to be back here? By the way, Porzingis hasn't played in about a month. I mean, that's the other factor in this thing. He has his last game that he played was January 7th. It's, we're a month. We're going to go a month between the last time he was on the floor. So, and now there's an illness involved. So I don't know exactly what's keeping him out, if it's an illness or an injury, but he's had both. And so he's, they got to get him out there, first of all, and then see what he can contribute. And it'll be interesting to watch what they look like with him, because he's such a unique player. And he is kind of a fun player to watch. So he, it's not like they get nothing out of this. And they were getting virtually nothing out of Kuminga anyway. The Hield thing is just a throw in, not a big deal. The Warriors also made another deal. They sent Trace Jackson Davis to Toronto for a second-round pick, which is the Lakers' second-round pick coming up in this June's draft. So, we got plenty of time between now and the draft to analyze who's in the draft and who's in round 2 and all that kind of stuff. But I kind of like Trace Jackson Davis, and it's disappointing they couldn't develop him a little bit more, but hopefully he gets an opportunity in Toronto. He's a pretty polished player. He's not a special player by any stretch, but he's solid. He's a solid NBA player for sure. And, I thought he did some really good things here. So, he's not a 3-point. He's a big man who's not a 3-point shooter in an era where it seems like everybody wants a 5 that's a stretch 5. The interesting thing will be how the Warriors lineup plays together, because now you've got Post and Porzingis that can shoot the ball, and you've got, how does it blend with Green? How does it blend with their other players? I think that's going to be kind of interesting to see how the thing blends. But more than anything, I'm also eager to see who are they going to go after? How are they going to use this money? I could see Porzingis being here next year, but it'll be interesting to see what do the Warriors try to make some kind of big trade this summer, or do they pursue a free agent or two? And what kinds of players will want to come here to play with Steph? Some people around the Warriors have said to me, man, we've wasted the last couple of years of Steph Curry. And I understand it's not that their message was like the 2 timeline thing doesn't work. And I'm like, no, the 2 timeline thing works fine as long as you pick the right players. You had a top pick. You could have taken, Halliburton. Instead, you took James Wiseman. He's a bust. You took Jonathan Kuminga. You didn't have to take Jonathan Kuminga. You could have taken Franz Wagner or Trey Murphy. You could have probably taken Trey Murphy instead of Moses Moody, I think, or maybe Murphy went one pick ahead. No, I think Murphy went behind. I think Murphy went behind the Warriors. They could have gotten Trey Murphy in that thing. I was yelling and screaming about Murphy. I was yelling and screaming about Sengun. They passed on Sengun. He was available to them. The Warriors had this great front office with Jerry West and, Don Nelson's protege, Larry Riley, and Bob Myers and Travis Schlenk and just Larry Harris, and just a dream room full of guys. And Joe kind of chased him out, and now he's got a big voice in there. His kids have a big voice, and there's Dunleavy. You still have Larry Harris, but that's the room. The room's changed quite a bit, and they've made a lot of mistakes. And the coaching staff did not do a great job at developing Jonathan Kuminga. If you want to blame Kuminga, you can. If you want to blame the coaching staff, you can. But he didn't develop. He had 5 seasons with Golden State, and he's a 7th pick in the draft. He's as athletic as anybody, and he just didn't develop. Now, I don't think they took the wrong guy. I just don't think they gave him the ability to really get out there and develop. Every time they yanked him around. How about that playoff run where he played one playoff game and then Kerr benched him after one playoff game? I mean, it's just what they mismanaged this kid to death. And yes, did he have some issues in his game? And was he not a fully polished player? Did he do some stupid things? Yeah, absolutely. But, 5 years, and you took an asset that was a lottery pick, and you got it down to all you're getting out of him is a expiring contract of a guy who hasn't played in a month and who's injury prone. That's what you got out of Kuminga. Look what you got out of James Wiseman. Nothing. That you had the 2nd pick in the draft and you had the 7th pick in the draft, and you got nothing out of it. So don't tell me about the 2 timelines. The 2 timelines are fine if you pick Halliburton and Wagner. You got a nice little collection of players. You can do 2 timelines. You just can't do 2 timelines when you pick the wrong guys. And, when you chase out all your credible personnel people except for 1 or 2, and you're going to do it, and you really have no expertise in it, that's how you get Justinian Jessup. That's how you get Alan Smiley-Geach. That's how you get, some of the bums that they've drafted. Jordan Bell, the guy from Cincinnati, supposed to be a 2 guard who couldn't shoot. They have just been coming up blanks for, a while. Where are the difference makers? Where are the stars? Where are the picks? You chased out all these guys to do it yourself with your kids, and now your team is nothing. The run's over. The run's over. And I don't know what's sadder, that they missed out on Steph's twilight, or that they're still trying to figure out how to reopen Steph's window, when the smarter move would be to probably move off of Steph. It's funny. There was a Bleacher Report random trade the other day that included the Warriors, and it was the Warriors sending Steph to Philly for Edgecombe, who just had 25 against the Warriors, Tuesday night. And it was like Edgecombe and McLean and picks, and McLean got dealt, I think, to OKC today. But it was like Edgecombe's going to be a great young guard. And the Warriors probably need a bunch of picks, and it would probably be the smart thing to do. If you really care about Steph winning this title, this extra ring that you're talking about, then if you care so much about that, then you should absolutely be after a deal like that, because he ain't going to do it here. It's not going to happen with the Warriors. But it's like they don't care about Steph winning that title. That's all lip service. They care about themselves, of course, and they can't understand that it would be, the smart play would be to continue to build and get younger in the process. And hopefully you build a really good team. And then when Steph's ready to retire, you're still ready to roll. Instead, they've moved Jordan Poole for old Chris Paul. That didn't work. They got nothing out of Wiseman. They got very little out of Kuminga. We'll see what they can turn Kuminga's, money into Porzingis, now Porzingis into an expiring. Let's see what they do with the $30 million. So it's just like, do they have flexibility, financial flexibility? Yeah. But you also have a situation where you have an old team that's thin and a megastar. And, the fans love the megastar. I think everybody, why would Giannis come here knowing that if things don't go well, then nobody's going to blame Steph. They're going to blame Giannis. So I think Giannis, I think it's a long shot that they're ever going to get a player like that. And because the players scout the other teams and they see, he's looking at the Warriors going, man, okay, Steph's in decline. The rest of the thing's pretty average. They missed on some picks. Unless I put the thing on my back, I'm gonna have to carry this thing. And if we fall short, you think the fans are gonna turn on Steph? No. So, I don't think the Warriors are quite as attractive from the outside looking in as the Warrior fans would think their situation, would be, considering Steph's a great guy and they've won championships and it's a great place to live and so on and so forth. I don't think the NBA players are running to come here. So we shall see. We shall see. Kind of an underwhelming trade. 2 underwhelming trades. I'm okay, I guess, with the Trace Jackson Davis. Maybe the Warriors have their eye on somebody in the second round that they really think is going to be, good. I'll say this about the NBA draft. Trading assets that you don't really think much of for second round picks is always smart. Why? Because the NBA, it's such a speculative draft. There's going to be guys who are college freshmen, international players, all kinds of players at different levels of development. And I think the last 4 or 5 years have proven that, Jokic was a second round pick. You can find guys in the second round that are pretty damn good and sometimes as good as anybody outside the lottery. So, taking a flyer on the second round pick is not a bad thing, especially if you have somebody in mind that you want to pick with that second round pick. So we'll see how that conveys in June. But as far as the Warriors, is their title window open? No. Is their playoff window get any juicier? I think they're probably a play-in team. I guess they're getting something. If they can get Porzingis out there, they're getting something where Kuminga was giving them nothing. So maybe there's an improvement there. Will they make another deal before the deadline? I don't know. I don't know how they're positioned. I could definitely see, there was a lot of talk about Draymond Green being moved. And it sounds like, the Warriors, there may be some scenarios where they would almost prefer to move Draymond Green. And he definitely has a big salary. So that might be the move tomorrow, to look for some deal that involves Draymond Green going out. Maybe not. Maybe this eliminates the need for that, but we'll see how the Golden State Warriors are thinking. Green also slated to be a free agent this summer. So he's an expiring in his own right. So maybe they're just looking to the summer and they'll keep him around just because his deal's expiring. But that would be interesting to see if they're like Detroit. If I was at Detroit, I'm going for, I got a young group and I'm looking to try to win a title, try to make a run in the playoffs. I don't think I can win a title, but make a run. Draymond Green is from Michigan. I could see that being an attractive, player to a young team to give them a little championship pedigree, a little confidence, a little, hey, somebody who's been there before. That would be interesting if Detroit would make that move. I don't know who would come back, but that would be interesting. Thanks to Sleeper for being this proud sponsor of the Krug Show. Use promo code Larry. Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Links in the description. Terms and conditions do apply. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.